Hi, it's Seta here. Welcome to another video in the series where I combine knowledge about level and environment design made mainly for solo developers, no matter which engine they use. And today we will talk about something that both game designers and players hate: ladders. Let's begin. Right after stairs, ladders are another common element in games that let the player move between a higher and a lower level. Their advantage is that, unlike stairs, they take up practically no space in the scene, they shorten the vertical path as much as possible, and because they contrast with the surroundings, they are one of the elements that guide the player, subconsciously suggest goal or area to explore. On an emotional level, ladders often evoke a sense of anticipation and slight tension. And that is where their advantages ends. That's why the term "f*** ladders" has become popular, and there is some truth about it. First, ladders limit mobility. A player who could move freely, jump, use weapons or skills suddenly lose control. The only thing they can do is go up or go down. Second, they strongly affect the pace of gameplay, slowing it down. Ladders that take up 3 seconds to climb are okay. Up to 6 seconds is still fine if they don't appear too often. But if climbing takes more than 7 seconds and nothing happens during the climb, the player will start looking for a way to shorten the process, and if none exists, they will start feeling bored. Third, ladders disturb the sense of safety and situational awareness. Where the player enters a ladder, they can't defend themselves, can't react quickly, their field of view is limited, and predicting dangers become more difficult. And dying on the ladder is one of the most frustrating things in the games, because the player didn't have full control over their character. Fourth, ladders complicate combat dynamics and AI. This can cause situations where an enemy stands above or below a ladder and just watch the player, tries to run onto the ladder, or even worse, attack from range where the player can't defend themselves. To avoid this, you often have to spend many hours making the AI work correctly, all because of one badly placed ladder. And fifth, let's be honest, ladders are one of the most boring and least creative ways to handle height differences. So, as you can see, they are not as good as they look. On paper, they are simple and helpful, but in practice, they break the pace, limit the player, complicate combat, and create frustration for both devs and players. And ask yourself, when was the last time you used a real ladder in real life? And I don't mean a small ladder to change the light bulb, I mean a real ladder. Probably a long time ago. So why we put ladders in the game so often, as if they were the most natural way to move between levels? If I haven't discouraged you yet, and you really need a ladder in your game because of story, the level structure, realism or atmosphere requires it, I got some tips for you. Think about whether the ladder makes sense in the place where you want to put it. Seeing a ladder in a sewer is normal for a player, but a ladder in the middle of the building, leading to the next floor, feels wrong and breaks the consistency of environment. So, if you wanna place a ladder, always ask yourself why someone would place a ladder there. Remember that a ladder must lead somewhere. Don't place ladders that lead to empty space where the player won't find anything useful or that don't lead to the next area. Make sure that a climbable ladder is readable for the distance, for example, giving it a contrast color or proper lighting. This way, you teach the player that the ladder is climbable and not just decoration. If you previously used yellow ladder for climbing, for example, you could also add broken yellow ladder, suggesting the player needs to find another way to the next floor. Place ladders only where necessary. If you know the player will go through the same path more than twice, never put a ladder there, because while the player might tolerate this boring element first time, every next climb will be more and more frustrating. So think whether it wouldn't be better to place some kind of lift there, maybe a simple rope that quickly pulls the player up, or one the player can slide down. Use ladders sparingly. 2 or 3 ladders per level are fine, but try to be creative. If you need a vertical sequence, consider shelves, platform, or climbing instead. If you have a ladder that does not touch a wall, make sure the player can change the side they climb on. You don't want the player to climb for 10 seconds and then realize they are on the wrong side and can't reach the platform. Think about whether you really need one long ladder or you can split it into smaller ones and give the player a short moment of control. If the level really needs one long ladder, then give the player something interesting while climbing. A nice view, a change in perspective, or a preview of new area. Give the player some control while climbing. Let them look around, go down quickly, or cancel the climb at the cost of falling. There is nothing worse than being stuck to the ladder where the camera looked forward. So make sure that the player sees something logical and interesting while climbing. Try design the climbing mechanics so the player can choose if they want to climb fast or slow. You can allow small jumps or climbing boost, for example at the cost of stamina, which when the player cause a falling. These small mechanics make the climbing moment more interesting, and when it comes to going down, give the player options to either slide down the ladder quickly or climb down at the normal pace. Never put a ladder in a high-intensity combat area unless it is a first-person or third-person shooter, when the player can risk going to a higher position at the cost of being spotted and shot. Otherwise, a ladder should never be placed on combat area unless the story or environment requires it. But if you need ladder in combat area, try script AI projectiles so that 90% of cases they don't hit the player when they're moving on the ladder, but still create pressure by landing nearby. This makes the player think they were lucky, and reaching the top becomes a reward. Of course, if the players stop on the ladder, then the hit frequency must be much higher, otherwise they will figure out that something is wrong and start abusing it. Never punish the player with a fall from a ladder when they get hit by projectiles when the ladder isn't part of some challenge. There is nothing more frustrating than climbing half or more and falling back to the bottom just to do the whole thing again. If the players falls again and again, this may frustrate them so much they quit the game, and that is what we want to avoid. Remember that the ladders slow down the game. Well-designed ladders don't just move the player between levels, they also help reinforce the pacing of the game. So place them where you want the player to slow down a bit, for example after a boss fight when they exit the sewers into a new area. And yes, every proper game needs a sewer level. Consider players with varying abilities. Some may have difficulty with long climb. You can offer options like fast climbing, automatic climbing, or shortened animation for players with mobility limitation. Not every ladder has to be a classical vertical one. You can use slanted ladders, ropes, chains, or moving climbing elements. In some games, ladders might not exist at all. Player can instead use ledges, platforms, or parkour-style climbing. Check if the ladders create an interesting moment of risk and reward, and adjust their position, type, and behavior if needed. And finally, always remember playtesting. Check how long it takes to climb a ladder, whether the player used them too often on your level, if there are too many deaths near ladders, and if the climbing works correctly, even when the player doesn't hit the ladder perfectly. As you can see, ladders are not bad by themselves, but they are one of the most problematic elements in level design. If you are use them, make sure they make sense, then don't break the pacing and give the player at last a bit of control or some interesting feeling. Treat ladders as a last resort, not a default vertical solution, and if you really must add one, do it carefully. And that's all for this video. If you haven't seen the previous video of this series, be sure to watch it. You will learn more about scale, doors, hallways, and how to create stairs. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And until next time, see ya!